Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. So this is the first volume in my Ask Andy series, which is where you can all send me questions and I will answer them. So the question I'm going to answer today is one that a lot of you have sent me and have asked, which is about my writing process. What is my writing process? So before I answer that, I'm going to kind of briefly go over the two major processes. We have plotters, which are someone who really plans everything out. They do very, very detailed outlines. They do very detailed character sheets. They have an idea exactly of where the story is going, what the characters, how they're going to develop, where they're going to go, what they're going to do. Some I know some authors, their outlines in this can be like 30 pages long, 40 pages long. Um, so they really take a lot of time before they start writing to plan everything out. The other side is of the spectrum is a pantser, which is comes from the phrase "by the seat of your pants," writing by the seat of your pants. This is would be completely opposite of the plotter. So there's very little to no planning, no outlines. They get ideas for the story and character development while they're writing. So things come to them as they write. And then, of course, some writers can be a bit of both. They might do, a basic outline and then before they write, but then, while they write, they're open to some changes. So if they get another idea, they can certainly go outside of their outline. It really just depends on the writer. But for me, I'm a pantser. I have a basic idea of the story when I start writing, but that's about it. I have no idea about where anything's going. Lots of times I have no idea how the ending is going to be or what's going to happen at the end or what I need to have happen to get to an end. I really have a basic idea of where to start. But that being said, there are some organization things that I do to help me as I write. So before I begin writing, I create a folder for each of my books that has any ideas I have for the story, the characters in the series. So, for example, this picture over here, this is my current folder for the book I'm writing now, which is The Door, which is the first book in the Balance of Time series. And that picture was actually the inspiration that I got for the story, for the idea. So and I have character names in there because this one I did actually have to take a little bit more time with the characters because they needed to have specific meanings because it's the god of hope, peace, pestilence, and famine. So I wanted the names to have a meaning for each god. So I wrote all that down, things like that. That goes in my folder. Then, as I write, I take notes on my world, if it's an epic fantasy, my magic systems, and characters. So I kind of create my character sheets or magic system sheets, things like that, as I write. And I do this so it helps with the consistency so that, 3 chapters later, I don't say something complete, that, oh, well, this person has blue eyes or something, and in the beginning they had brown. Simple details like that to make sure everything is consistent as I continue to write. And so I have something easy to reference off of instead of having to scroll back or scroll through and find the original writing in my work in progress. And then in addition to notes, I started this now with with The Door, with my current book, where I create a basic outline of the chapters and scenes while I'm writing. So here's an example of that over here. So it's just a basic chapter 1, scene 1, briefly what happens in scene 1, scene 2, etc. So I used to use Scrivener, and I didn't like it, and I know a lot of people love it, but it just didn't work with my brain. It was too difficult to use for me. I like things more handwritten, easy to find in front of me. So it kind of takes the place of Scrivener when I'm doing here. Because in Scrivener, you can, your chapters are all organized and your scenes are all organized and you can see everything on the side. So, but now I'm doing it in Word. And so I decided to do this so that it would help during the editing process when I get there. I also, this is kind of a new thing I started. I create boards on Pinterest for each book with inspiration photos of characters and settings, again, for easy access when writing. And this also helps me with consistency as well. If I don't write something down or don't think it's important, and then later on find out, hey, that kind of was important, I can go and look at my inspiration boards, and it helps. It really helps with that. So this picture, this is from from the next series. This is Gaius's folder. He is a ballet dancer. So this is one of my main inspiration photos for him. I also have one for Adriel, Sperantia, Emil, and then the book itself for the door. The door actually physically itself. I have the colors in there. I have the handle in there, the handle pulls. So everything that I kind of use as inspiration, I keep in these boards, which is very helpful. For my first two series, they were epic fantasy, as some of you might know, the Dragonmouth Chronicles and the Valinor Trilogy. For these, I drew very, very crude maps as I wrote. That helped with topography, spatial awareness between cities and countries, things like that. And it was a lifesaver, really, when the characters were traveling, which in epic fantasy, they travel quite a lot. So as I was writing, I would draw, and it really was just a circle with a name, a country's name, lines. I would draw, forests, lakes, whatever, things like that. And it was very, very helpful, again, for consistency. So in the beginning of the book, I wouldn't say, oh, this place had a lake, and then later on in the book, there was absolutely no lake present. Very, very helpful for me. And I do switch for my writing process. I do switch between using my typewriter, handwriting, and typing on the computer. Usually I will either handwrite or use my typewriter when I'm doing the very, very first, writing it down for the first time. And then I will take those once I get a good chunk and go on the computer and write and type them up and do some little edits as I go along. I'm not really looking to edit as I go, but if something pops out at me and I think of a better way to write something, or something to delete or do something differently, I'll change it really quickly. My brain just works better, kind of the old school ways with writing or using the typewriter. So that's just me. Usually it will take me about 6 to 9 months to write a book from start to finish, depending on what else I'm working on. I do some short stories that I work on. Sometimes I work on multiple books at the same time. Depends also on how many cons I have in that time frame, things like that. So overall, in total, it usually takes me about 6 to 9 months from start to finish. And the thing I want to say about this is that there really is no right or wrong. So I've seen and I've heard some authors say, oh, well, for epic fantasy, you have to do outlines, you have to do this. And you don't. There's no right or wrong way. Whatever, try different things, find what works best for you. Advice is advice. It's nothing more than that. What works for me might not work for you. What works for someone else might not work for you. Maybe it'll be a combination of both. So definitely look at things like this and try to get ideas and to try new things and to try different ways. But in the end, you will find a system that works the best for you. And really, that's all that matters. For those people, doing it my way probably would not work. But for me, doing it their way also would not work with the outline. So it really is, it's not right or wrong. It's whatever you find that works for you. And it's okay to change your process from one project to another. So like I said, in my first two, well, maybe the last four books of mine, I used Scrivener. Um, because actually it might have been five books because Scrivener wasn't out, I don't think, when, or I didn't know about it when I did my first book. So for most of my books, I used Scrivener. And then I got to this one and I decided, you know what, Scrivener doesn't really work for me. I'm going to go back to Word. And that's fine. And I changed my system a little bit so that it works for me for this book. And that's fine. If you find that, maybe just what you did before just isn't chilling with you anymore, just isn't working right. That's fine. There's no you don't have to have a set way to go about things. Change it up, try different things, and really just do what you find works for you for the book you're working on, or the story or project you're working on. So that is my first installment of Ask Andi. If you have a question, leave it in the comments below. You can email me at andy@andyo'connor.net. And all the information will be below. So, and definitely subscribe. If you have any other thoughts or comments, please put them in. And I love to hear from you. Thanks, guys.